Have you got one of these? You know how to use it? Want to learn how to use it better? Think it's just for home movies? There's enough consumer video equipment available right now for you to start your own television station. Okay, you read all the equipment manuals, and you know what every darn button on the camcorder does, and you're quite a video expert. I suspect by now you've also annoyed your family and friends with your camcorder. See, you know that you have an amazing electronic time machine here. It will record things and save them forever. But you've probably also discovered that most people are quite expert television viewers, and they don't want to watch something that's shaky or out of focus, or worse yet, shot by somebody who doesn't know when to say cut. There's always the fast forward button while you're showing it to people, but why not think in terms of using your camera to tell a story? Now, there are levels of approach you can take. You can do an official storyboard, pencil, paper, make a little picture of every shot and how it should advance the story. Or at the other end, you can do what I do, just watch professional news magazine shows to see how they assemble a story visually. Whatever you shoot, try to make sure that it has a beginning, a middle, and an end. And don't forget that most important element of video. Timing. Now, telling a story with a camera isn't as difficult as it seems. Most of the things you'll shoot already have a theme. A birthday party, a boat trip, a school concert, barbecue time, the parade. To learn to be an effective video storyteller, one of the most important lessons you have to learn are the rules of editing. We're going to take a look at a short video that was made by a camcorder enthusiast with a technique that we call in-camera editing. That means knowing when to push the start-stop button at the appropriate moment. Open, close, display, program, time, volume. Play. All the editing and effects you're seeing were made in a high-end consumer camcorder while shooting. Pretty sophisticated stuff. The main benefit for editing in camera is that there's no generation loss. We don't have to edit to another tape, which would be a second generation. With each generation of re-recording your video, the picture and sound quality deteriorates. With in-camera editing, you can create some great effects, like dissolving these people on from a freeze frame. The other reason for in-camera editing, apart from the time saved in the edit room, is the fact that you can discipline yourself. You'll be asking yourself, how should I start and end a scene? Should I be wide or close up? Should I pan the camera? How long should this shot be? If you make a mistake, you can always go back and redo the edit. Music will help convey the atmosphere. And remember, good videos don't go on forever. They just fade away. This program is in two parts. The first part is about in-camcorder editing. Part 2 we've titled Directing the Shot. We're going to explain some of the rules of editing throughout the program. In Part 1, in-camcorder editing, we'll have editing a speech, building an action sequence, editing pictures to music, and run-up time. One perfectly good reason for editing is to prevent your audience from falling asleep. I've met a lot of people in my life, but never met one who wanted to watch a 3-hour wedding. Met a couple who thought they wanted to watch a 3-hour wedding until they tried it. At a wedding, you might want to get everybody who makes a speech. It's the nice thing to do, right? But you don't want that accumulated 45 minutes or hour that it's going to take. A way to edit that is to start rolling on a person, they're talking. Now you know what they look like, you know their general attitude and what they have to say. Wait till they get to the end of a thought and push stop. Now let them jabber on all they want for 10 or 20 minutes. And you can always tell when a person is sort of ready to wrap up, because often they say, well, and finally. At that point, you take a shot of the wedding cake or anything on the table, some flowers, a candle, and you wait until they've just hit the end of a sentence, roll again, and bring it back up to the person as they're just finishing their speech. No one will ever miss that 10 or 20 minutes that you cut out. Whenever you're shooting something repetitive, it doesn't have to be an amusement park ride. It could be anything from speeches at a wedding to folk dancing. As long as the action repeats over and over again, you can build up an edited sequence right in your camera by repositioning yourself at various points in the action and waiting for that repetitive moment to come along again.
To shoot this sequence properly requires that I not pan with the ride, let it exit a static frame. It's good to plan on what the end shot will be ahead of time. When shooting, it's hard to know where each shot will end exactly, so you might have to record more than you need and wind back to the spot where the next scene should begin. If you want to add more shots later to your sequence, you can record over the original picture, inserting new picture, providing you have an insert edit mode on your camcorder. The first thing to do is to record the musician, both picture and sound, from beginning to end. Then we'll go back and insert edit some pictures, like cutaways of the crowd. If you have a shaky camcorder shot, you can replace it with a better shot. Once you've completed shooting the musician, wind back to the beginning and find where you'd like to insert a new shot. Press the Insert Edit button and you're ready to shoot. Here are my insert shots of the crowd. The soundtrack of the musician remains because when you insert edit, you don't erase the linear soundtrack. You can insert between different pictures over the soundtrack, or you could go back and forth between the musician and the crowd. Be aware of run-up time that your camera might require when making an edit like this.
Now, before you run out to use my very inventive wedding shortening technique, there's something you're going to have to learn about your own camcorder. They're all a little different, but virtually all of them do this. They make a beautiful edit when you push the start and stop button. But the way they do that is when you press stop, they roll the tape back a little bit so that the next time you press start, the tape rolls forward in play mode, and then when everything's up to speed, that beautiful edit is made. Now you have to learn how long it takes your camcorder to do this. Otherwise, you'll think you're recording things that you're not, especially those beginnings of those sentences and things. So I'm going to do a little test here. First, I'm just going to roll some video. All right, this is roll up for test number 3. You never saw the other 2 takes. All right, now I stop, and I'm waiting for the tape to wind back. You can actually see it happen right in through the little window. All right, I'm going to count to 3, and as I say 1, I'm going to push the record button. 1, 2, 3. I'll push stop. I'm waiting for it to recue. Okay, it's ready. I'm going to do it a few times. 1, 2, 3, and stop. The reason I want to do it a few times is I might actually have a button and finger coordination problem, so I want to get an average. 1, 2, 3. That's the end of our test. Okay, now I'm going to re-cue this and set it up to play. You make an edit. Roll up for test number 3. Yeah, you never saw the other 2 takes. All right, now stop. 3. Push stop. 3. And stop. That's the end of our test. The gap's often bigger than you would imagine. Now, since all camcorders do this to a certain extent and they're all different, you really need to perform that kind of a test with your camera if you want those nice smooth edits at the places where you thought they were going to be.
What, part 2 already? Oh, okay, directing the shot. This will have making shot decisions, screen direction, eye lines and the axis, types of shots, pans and tilts, in-camcorder effects, and scene transitions. When you're operating the camcorder, you're wearing many hats. You're a photographer, a director, a sound recordist, and an editor. This will all require a lot of split-level decisions, as there are many components to getting a good shot. This all leads up to making shot decisions.
When you're out shooting action and you're the director, you face all these split-second decisions like, should I be at the top here getting these guys going down the slide, or should I be at the end getting them coming down towards me? It doesn't really matter what you decide as long as you've thought about it and there's a reason for your decision. I want to be at the bottom because that way my shot's going to end in a close-up and it'll be more exciting. Come on down. Ooh, that was so exciting I almost got hit.
Screen direction and eye lines are important. You can mess up your sequence by positioning your camera in the wrong place. Here we've created a nice illusion that Marnie has a twin sister. Well, she doesn't. We simply have the ball going in the right direction. Particular attention should be made to eye line direction between your cuts.
Whenever you're shooting cutaways, it's important to be conscious of screen direction. What I mean is this. Here I am looking from left to right. Now, without moving me, just moving the camera, I can be seen to be looking from right to left. Now, screen direction gets mighty important when two people are talking to each other, so we're going to fly in a guest at great expense. We have a thing called, hi Fred, we have a thing called the axis. That means that with any action, we draw a line through it and then never cross that line with the camera. In the case of two people talking to each other, the axis is pretty straightforward. It's a line that runs from nose to nose and then extends out in as far as you can imagine in both directions. Here's what would happen if we crossed it. Fred, you've been seen dumping toxic stuff into the river. No, that wasn't me. See, Fred and I both end up looking in the same direction now, and no one's sure who's talking to whom. And as a matter of fact, whenever you cross the axis, you usually end up making the viewers' heads do this. Right, right, who's he talking to? Where are they? Arg!
When shooting sports, always make sure you stay on one side of the action. If you cross the axis, this is what happens. More twins.
Okay, assignment. How about a 1 to 2 minute sequence of a running or a chase scene? Now, every shot that you put into that sequence should make you conscious and emphasize screen direction and continuity rules. Some suggested themes might be man chases dog, bicycle race, any kind of a sports game, or maybe a rush hour where things actually rushed. Okay, well, get to it. Oh, wait a minute. Don't get to it right now. There's more show left. Sometimes screen direction can be changed by using a neutral shot.
A neutral shot can save you when you're crossing the axis. You can have a major continuity problem when shooting several people around a table. For instance, from this camera angle, Arlene appears to be looking right to left. Now I change my position. She's looking left to right. To remedy all this, we need some cutaways. Hot dogs, flowers. Now we can go back to Arlene looking right to left. Cutaways have saved more than one director's reputation.
Now, we're not fond of making you memorize a whole bunch of fancy words, but the following terms are important when organizing your thoughts for shooting. In order to make your videos interesting, it's important to use various shots to establish your scene and things like that. For instance, this is an extreme wide shot, or maybe it's an extreme long shot, or maybe this is an extreme long shot. And then, of course, there's just the plain old long shot or wide shot. And to complete the series of shots, there'd be a medium shot, but this might not quite be a medium shot to everybody. Maybe this is a medium shot. And of course, the essence of television itself is the close-up. But some people actually would feel that this was more of a close-up. The important thing about shots isn't the terminology, what you call them, but that you actually use them to establish your scene and tell your story effectively. I smell a barbecue.
When you first see the location, you have to decide where you'd like to frame and what your first shot should be. You might choose the wide picture that you're seeing now, or start with the barbecue in a chronological order of events. Or you could zoom in further and start with a tighter shot that still manages to see a fair bit. We'll call this the medium-wide shot. We suggest that you use your zoom mainly to get position, then start recording. This shot could be described as a medium-wide 3-shot. And this shot is a medium shot. And this shot's a close-up of a hungry little girl. And here's a close-up of flowers, in case I get in trouble with screen direction.
One of the most powerful things about video is movement, and you should always consider some sort of movement, even when your subject itself is static. This is the most common camera move there is. It's called panning. Panning usually refers to moving the camera left and right. Now, I have to share with you my least favorite panning motion because I've seen everybody do it. You know, you've got this magnificent piece of scenery, you zoom out wide and it still doesn't fit, so you're going to pan it. Pan, and you get to the end, and just to make sure you've actually got the whole thing, you pan back over the very thing you've just panned. I call that spray painting. To do a nice pan, you should try to work it out so that you can begin on some sort of interesting frame that you can hold for a few seconds. Then do the pan, being careful not to go so fast that everything becomes a blur. And to make it a really great pan, it should also end on an interesting frame that can be held again for a few seconds. Now, depending on what country you're from and what industry you work in, panning the camera up and down is usually called tilting. And panning and tilting have been the source of endless mirth in the industry because you'll note that when you pan the camera left, the picture actually moves right, and vice versa. The same applies for tilting. For instance, when we tilt the camera up, the picture moves down. Tilt up. Camera movement is a lot of fun, but sooner or later it has to stop. And it's best to work out a way it can do that gracefully. If you're following someone with the camera, it's best to stop the camera and let them walk out of frame. Now, if you intend to edit what you shoot later, you should hold at the beginning and end of any camera movement for a lot longer than you would normally. You know, hold for 10 seconds, do the camera move, and hold for another 10 seconds. That way you've got 3 different ways you can use that shot in the edit room later. In any event, if you have any kind of a camera move that's the end of a sequence, you should also hold at the end of that move for a few seconds. And remember, when people are walking away from you, let them exit a static frame. Don't pan with them. Another type of pan you've probably seen on the old Batman TV shows. We like to call it a whip pan. Here I am on a city street, and here I am at the beach. Of course, no one else is here at the beach. And here I am back on the city street. So it's important for you, the director, to tell you, the camera person, how long shots should last and where they should start and finish. Often the action will dictate this for you, but sometimes there is no action, a static shot of a beach or a mountain. In those cases, you just have to develop a feel for how long the shot should last. Timing is integral to editing and directing. But there's good news. Videotape is cheap and it's reusable, so why not practice? Practice making a camera move that actually says something, and then play them back to make sure you're giving the viewer enough time to appreciate what it is you're trying to say. And watch television. Your average $1 million network documentary usually has the timing right. When you're editing right in the camera, you often have various devices right at your fingertips that'll help you enhance your sequences. Most cameras can fade to and from black and or white, and depending on the model, you might have some digital effects that you can use for transitions.
A dissolve is one of the best in-camera transitional effects. It actually helps awkward cuts and can act as a passage of time. This strobe effect gives a feeling of slow motion. Here's an effect with a freeze and a partial wipe. Watch what happens.
By now, you know that there are an awful lot of fancy transitions you can do right within some of the more expensive cameras. But no matter whether you have a fancy, expensive camera or a very simple, basic one, scene transitions are going to be important to you. They're a way to begin and end your scene. And the scene transitions are sort of like the punctuation in a language. For instance, the visual equivalent of a period is a fade to black. Goodbye. Wait, come back. We're not done with transitions yet. The transition I find myself most often using is the tilt from the sky. The sky is pretty handy to use because it's usually there outdoors. Of course, once you've mastered the tilt from the sky, if you want to end a scene, there's always the tilt to the sky. Walking into an empty frame is always handy, as is the reverse, walking out. Don't forget there are several ways to come into a frame. Now, every transition we've just shown involves a simple cut, something you can do with any camcorder. And these are bread and butter cuts. They're used all the time. There are fancier cuts you can make too. There are all sorts of great cuts you can think up. As a matter of fact, if this one doesn't work, you'll never see it. But what the heck, it's videotape. Now, I don't want to distress anyone, but I can't really do that in real life. There are just millions of ways that you can think to make a simple transition that will begin or end a scene. As a matter of fact, I have to end this scene. And since the camera's now locked in one position, I think I know how to do it. Get a load of this. I'm fading.
Remember this from the beginning of the show? This is your assignment. Make an in-camera visual essay. If you don't have a fancy camera, simple cuts will do. The subject could be your street, your town, the fall fair, whatever. To help you out, we gave this assignment to a videographer. Then we took our camera and followed him around.
Do you always figure out right away what the first shot is to take? How do you establish this kind of?
Well, that's the fun thing about video. It's not till you actually turn up on location that you really know what you're going to do. So you wait around, you find something interesting, see how people are reacting to you and whatnot. And when people are feeling comfortable, something just comes to you. Like the road sign here. Help establish a shot. Lets us know where we are.
So don't let me stop you taking the shot.
Okay.
This effect is simply a wipe on a freeze frame. Show me the effects that come with your camcorder.
Well, this one here can just freeze an image, so you can tape it. And you can do different things with that freeze by pushing this button several times. This here will just strobe. A lot of people like to see a picture strobing. You might get someone dancing.
That's like a series of stills?
Yeah, and it looks interesting. Here, if we push this button, it freezes at the end of the scene that we shot, and it dissolves or wipes to the next shot, depending on how many times we push this button here.
It freezes when you push stop on the
Right.
camcorder button.
That's right. And this one up here is if there's not enough light, say inside your house around a birthday cake, somebody turned down the lights, if we push that button, we'd have enough light.
I never take my tripod along because I'm always, it's an extra hassle, but I noticed that you're a lot more regular at using a tripod.
Yeah, I guess it's just the mood I'm in today. Sometimes just on my shoulder is the most fast and interesting way of capturing something. If I have this tripod, people might start running away from me or something. So today I'm in a tripod mood. And it's a different picture altogether.
You can get a lot more close-ups that way too as well.
Yeah.
When shooting close-ups or macros, a tripod prevents a shaky picture. Noticing detail and getting more close-ups than wide shots makes for a more interesting video. Look out for abstract shots and textures that can also tell the story.
You don't look too happy.
No, I just did a shot here, and I didn't like it at all. I made 3-4 mistakes here, so I'm just backing up. And I eliminated the scene, and I'm going to change it and put a different one in here. Normally I'd take this out in editing, but today I'm doing an in-camera edit, so I'm going to put this instead of that last scene.
Now nobody will ever see his mistake.
What you looking for?
Interesting faces.
There's nothing more interesting than a human face. If you can, use a long telephoto lens to get those candid shots from far away.
Well, Peter's off making his video, and I'm standing here like an idiot wishing I brought a camcorder, because this reminds me of the Caribbean. There's nowhere you can take a bad shot in this particular market. Everything's so interesting. I know for my plan, I would establish the market by showing a few wide shots of the streets and the people, but then I'd be excited to concentrate on all the little details, you know. I saw a shot where a patent leather shoe was reflecting a dead chicken, and there's a wonderful signage. For instance, there are signs all over the place that say meat market. As a matter of fact, that very market over there has a sign that says all meat refrigerated, and right below it, sitting on a board, obviously not refrigerated, is all the meat. Most of the stores proclaim cheap this or best prices or most unusual thingamajig. There are also varieties of fruits and vegetables I've never seen before. There's a wonderful thing over. Why didn't I bring my camera? Look at that. There's a thing over there that says checkerboard with 2 great big eyeballs.
Even though we're editing on the fly, music and narration could still be added later. Peter chose to close his visual essay by coming full circle to the street sign where he began.
And I'm finished.
So that ending shot kind of comes full circle was the sign, right?
Yeah.
Have you had any, like, that's one way to end this piece, but when you're doing a travel, have you had any other great ending shots that are memorable?
Yeah, I think you just have to look for inspiration on that day. And usually that's a person you might encounter and want to talk to or something. So they'll give you a nice smile or a wave, or they'll say, I'll see you later or something, and then that's it.
When we first started to put together this half-hour program, it came in at about 46 minutes. It was only after some additional editing that we were able to get it down to you at the correct length. Unfortunately, one of the things that went was my brilliant speech about how creative editing can save an entire program by changing the pace, by just moving one edit a couple of frames. That was a great speech, but that's editing, and that's all we have time for.